Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Living Well podcast with your host, me, Liv Hill. I'm excited to have you guys with us today. I have my dear friend here, Lindy, and Lindy is here, and we're going to talk all about hormone health on today's episode. I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself here in just a moment, but we are excited to have you listening. All right, now for faithful listeners, I hope that the audio in this recording is much better. If you are watching online, you see that I have a microphone. I feel like we are stepping it up a notch. This is going to be episode 51. So after 50 episodes, I decided we're going to keep this podcast rolling. So I might as well invest in some things to help make the audio better. And my husband was testing it last night, and he played back some audio, and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, we needed that 50 episodes ago. But here we are, episode 51. And if you know my philosophy, little steps forward always. So this is just another little step forward. You don't have to always start out perfect. All right. So Lindy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. All right, Lindy, tell us where you're from, your background. Tell us all about you. We're excited you're here.
Well, I'm Lindy Mullinax. I was born and raised in the Little Rock, Arkansas area. Born and raised at FPC NLR. Was raised under Bishop Joel Holmes, now Pastor Nathan Holmes. I am a family nurse practitioner. I became a nurse back in 2010, 21 years old. Immediately went to work on high-risk labor and delivery at a large hospital in Little Rock. I did that for 5 years before going to work as a nurse practitioner. Worked in primary care for about 3.5 years just to kind of say that I'd taken care of somebody other than women. And I did that and then went back to obstetrics because I missed it a lot. Taught in the College of Nursing, women's health for a little while. Then went back to working in obstetrics again in a clinic setting as a high-risk obstetric nurse practitioner. Also did gynecology as well. About 2 days a week. The rest of the week I worked high-risk obstetrics, which is where I always thought my heart would stay, was in obstetrics. But I began to see that there was a need for women who weren't pregnant yet. I live in Arkansas, and we have some of the highest maternal mortality risk, which means that more women die due to pregnancy complications in Arkansas than almost any other state in the country. And so these were issues that were really happening before pregnancy. So they were unhealthy before they ever got pregnant. So I decided that something needed to be done with women outside of pregnancy as well. And I began to be burdened. Started looking at more of a functional medicine way to look at things, started paying attention to hormones, which I had really not before, didn't know a lot about it, wasn't educated a lot about it. And now I own Her Whole Health, which is what I call a women's wellness clinic. We work on balancing hormones, little functional medicine, as well as wellness IVs, and just try to make women healthy.
Make women healthy. That's what we're here to do. I love your background. So you've hopped around a little bit, but you've always had a heart, it sounds like, for women's health.
Yes, it's my passion.
Yeah, I can tell. And you're making some big progress. You have in your past history, but then also with your clinic, really seeing women have a total change when they come in and talk about their hormones and things like that.
Absolutely. We believe, our name is Her Whole Health. We don't think that it's just one part of your health that we're looking at, but as being that we're apostolic owned clinic, we like to think about the spiritual aspects to our health, the mental aspects, as well as our physical health. So it's Her Whole Health. I am passionate about women being whole in every part of their life.
Every part of their life. And that's becoming more and more in the forefront of apostolic ministry and apostolic women. And we've put ourselves on the back burner. And I think there's been a little bit of stigma about feeling guilty about taking care of yourself, or just naturally you put yourself last. And there's nothing selfish about taking care of your health. If anything, it's giving more, because the better that we feel, the better, as more whole that we are spiritually, physically, mentally, the more that we are able to live in our calling completely.
Absolutely. Women are the heart of the church. We really are. It's hard to imagine any pastor without their wife beside them, events at the church without women really pushing it. We are the heart of the church. We're the heart of the home, and it matters that we're healthy.
Absolutely. All right, so on today's episode, we're going to talk. I know we're talking about hormones, and this always gets to me. Is that Instagram life? The highlight reel of life is balance your hormones, balance your hormones. And the question I always want to scream is like, what are you balancing? Like, I think a lot of women will say, I need to balance my hormones, or my hormones are off, and that's become a catchphrase of sorts. And so I am careful about what I put on social media about hormones and balancing hormones. And we're going to talk a lot about that. Women need to be educated on what falls in that category. Women need to be educated on, do you really need to balance your hormones? What are we looking for? And what's hormones in specific, if you're going to have conversations with your doctor or go into a clinic, what kind of conversations do you need to have? And I think a good jumping off point for that is, there's a surprising trend that's happening right now, which is women are experiencing perimenopause and menopause earlier than ever before. And they're experiencing that sometimes in their 30s, in their early 40s. And those are new territories, new ground. And social media is really having a heyday with menopause, postmenopause, talking about hormones, cortisol, and there's some truth to those things. And I really want to dig into the truths about what hormones are, what cortisol is, and how we're in the place of dealing with perimenopause in our 30s and 40s, when that used to be something that was regulated for most people out into 50s and 60s. So, Lindy, share your thoughts on when you hear somebody come into the clinic and say, I need to balance my hormones, or my hormones are out of whack. Where do you start with them?
So I usually start, there is a basic panel that I like to start with. I like to think about looking. Number one, we talk about their diet. Then there are specific labs that I want to see. I want to see their vitamin D. I think people don't realize that vitamin D is actually a hormone. We just think of it as something that we eat, or sunshine, but it's actually a hormone that controls a lot. It has a big, it plays a big role in our weight and our ability to lose weight. It also plays a huge role in our mood. A low vitamin D can make your anxiety worse. It can worsen depression. It also affects our cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So vitamin D is super huge. I've helped so many women by just getting a vitamin D level and getting them on the right dosage of it. The 2,000 milligrams doesn't always do.
I'm going to pause you right there. I'm just already going to jump in. I'm going to try to be quiet. I'm going to try. But again, this is ground level basics of my hormones are out of balance. And what you're saying, your vitamin D is a hormone. And so understanding that it might not be something so severe, and it still could be, but we want to start with, like you said, diet, and we'll get into that a little while, but that your vitamin D is a hormone. And I don't know about you, I'm sure you're the same. We pull labs here. I've never seen somebody with adequate vitamin D on a lab pull unless they've been aware of it earlier and are already managing it.
That's right. I also like to look at their thyroid, and not just a TSH, a T3, and a T4. So your TSH, that's that thyroid stimulating hormone. That's the first hormone usually that you'll see kind of go nuts. But I also like to look at their thyroid antibodies, because sometimes that's going to be off before your TSH is affected.
Right.
And sometimes even before your symptoms get super bad. Look at those antibodies to see if this is something autoimmune going on. Your immune system has attacked something, and it's going to affect your thyroid, which is a super important hormone. I like to get cortisol as well, because that's that main stress hormone. And if I've got somebody that's coming in that has 5 kids at home and are raising them by themselves, or maybe they're raising grandchildren that they didn't expect to raise, or maybe they're a pastor's wife who's also raising 4 kids and also working a full-time job, then that stress level and stress hormone is going to be really up. Insulin, that's what our body uses to convert energy or sugar into energy. I want to look at that to make sure that it's not being resistant or not working at all. And then, of course, estrogen, because that's one of the most important female hormones that there is. Progesterone as well. I need to know if those are normal and that they're able to have a normal cycle, as well as testosterone. A lot of people just think testosterone's a man thing, but, our testosterone can bottom out and we can feel terrible and have no energy to do anything. So those are really the most important things to me. I also like to look at a B12 level, even though it's not a hormone. It's one of a super important vitamin for energy, because the biggest complaint I hear is fatigue and inability to lose weight. Those are the two biggest things that I see.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And, kind of coming back to the vitamin D, I myself, a couple of years ago, thought I was going through depression, which was very unusual for me. And I thought, oh, I told my husband, I'm really going through some depression. And so I went and had a complete lab panel drawn, and it was like, no, you just need to take some vitamin D, girl. And it turned everything around for me when I took that vitamin D. And I had another client who she thought that the enemy was attacking her, and she was like, "The enemy is over me. He is attacking me." She was really just battling. And we pulled a lab panel on her, and it was low vitamin D, and she took that and started feeling like a new woman. So that's something that you can easily work on, is your vitamin D.
Absolutely.
And then thyroid, let's talk about thyroid. So let's break this down just a little bit. I will share after you do. I'll share my thoughts on thyroid as far as it relates to lifestyle management. There's a whole lot that you can do with your thyroid with the way that you live, but talk about it from a functional side and what markers you're looking for and why those matter, Lindy.
So I like to think of the thyroid kind of as the body's thermostat, because the thyroid helps set our metabolism, our energy, our body temperature. You'll notice these women who have thyroid issues either cannot tolerate being cold at all, it hurts when it's cold, or they can't tolerate heat at all. It also affects your hair, your skin, and your nails. Those are some of the kind of the first things they'll say. My hair's thinning, I can't lose weight. That's the metabolism part. And my nails are super brittle. So we'll kind of thyroid thing. Women, the thyroid, you're more likely to see thyroid imbalances in women than you are in men. It's just more common in us. And the biggest symptoms that we see with that, like I said, is fatigue, weight gain, hair thinning, and sensitivity to heat or cold. A lot of times the thyroid, if we catch it in time, there's a lot of supplements we can use that can treat that without going on a long-term medication. There's different diets that I'm sure you can get more into. But the thyroid is your thermostat. So you think how important your thermostat is to your house here in the South in the sweltering summer, and how important it is in the winter. So we want our thermostat to be working to its optimal capacity. And you may go to the doctor and they'll say, "Oh, your thyroid looks fine," but is it optimal for a female? Because typically our labs are based off of what we call normal. Normal is based off of a 40-year-old white male, and his normal is not the same as me as a 36-year-old female is. And so there are optimal levels and there are regular levels. Our goal is for you to be at optimal level.
Yes, I agree with that. And you hit on this in the beginning, is a TSH is not going to be enough to give you a response on a thyroid. You're going to need multiple things if you really want to get down to what's going on with my thyroid, what's happening here. And you mentioned like a TPO, so you can get your antibodies pulled for autoimmune. If you want to run through those thyroid markers, so
yes, absolutely.
You have to ask for these, right? Because your doctor's only going to pull probably a TSH, maybe a T3, T4, maybe.
Sure. So, I like the TPO. Those are the antibodies that's in your blood, because often, I think I said this earlier, you're going to have antibodies maybe before any of those TSH, T3, T4 kind of get off track. And that typically, if there's antibodies there, that's because there's something autoimmune going on, which means that your immune system, your body has attacked its immune system. And this can either make your thyroid work too well or not well enough. And so you want to ask for thyroid antibodies. Your doctor's going to know what that is. Also, a TSH, or your thyroid stimulating hormone, as well as T3, a free T3. So that's kind of the active thyroid hormone that makes the hormone. That's kind of the active part that makes the TSH work. And then the inactive thyroid hormone is T4 and a free T4. That's just, it looks at different ways that T4 works in your blood. You want all of those when you do a full thyroid workup at minimum. Not just the TSH, not just the T3, not just the T4, because we need to know what's causing them to be off.
Absolutely. And you'll have to push for those 9 out of 10 times with your physician. But if you feel like you're falling in a category where you want some answers with your thyroid, you can either go to, Lindy works across many states. You can, reach out to me, reach out to Lindy. We can help you draw those labs yourself if you want to draw them through either one of us, or if you go to your physician, make sure you're having that discussion. They will tell you that most physicians, and let me put this disclaimer, I'm not against physicians. They've done fantastic things, but as as women, we need to be educated to have quality discussions. And that's more of the drive, is you want to be able to have a quality discussion with your physician. So they're not pushing back out of, well, I don't think they push back. I think they're just busy and overworked, and they're going by, are you good, thumbs up, versus, like you said, Lindy, getting you to an optimal standpoint.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have never heard of thyroid as a thermostat. What I like to say is your thyroid and your metabolism are best friends. That's the way that I like to say that. If your thyroid is working at great capacity, most of the time your metabolism is going to work at a high capacity.
Absolutely.
From a lifestyle standpoint, one of the best things that you can do for your thyroid is to build muscle. That's one of the very best things because of the T3, T4 receptors. So building muscle is a great thing from a lifestyle standpoint. Pulling back ultra-processed foods is a great thing that you can do to help support your thyroid. And so ultra-processed foods are going to be your highly processed chips, cookies, packaged things, excess packaging. Those are going to be things, if you remove a majority of those, so it's not completely taking them out and sucking the life out of you where you can't have anything fun, but in your everyday diet, really trying to limit those ultra processed foods. And then the other two components are quality sleep and trying to keep that stress down low. Those are the things that, from a lifestyle standpoint, if we're not building muscle, if we're stressed out all the time, trying to run on 4 hours of sleep and eating a highly processed diet, that is not setting us up to have proper thyroid function.
That's right.
Yeah. And women, the muscle part's the big part. Lack of muscle on the body definitely impacts the way that our thyroid works. So if you are at a place to where you're starting to feel some of these things, like you were saying, Lindy, if we catch it early, you can really make some great progress on improving your thyroid before it gets to a place to where you need to be medicated.
Absolutely. It's important that you have proper intake of zinc and selenium as well. Those are two nutrients that are huge for your thyroid.
Yeah. What's the dosage on those, Lindy, that you like to give? Because I always walk a line with that, because you can overdo it on those. Yeah.
I kind of go based on what those thyroid antibodies look like.
Yeah.
And if it looks like there's some Hashimoto's going on, or maybe your TSH is not quite optimal, I'll do 30 milligrams of zinc and 200 micrograms of selenium.
Yeah. And so, of course, ask before don't self-medicate. Let's say that. Don't self-medicate on those things. Get your data. Don't just think, oh, well, I've got brittle nails, so I'm going to start taking these. Don't do that. Get your labs pulled for sure. But having those types of supplements can definitely help if you are at a place where you're like, well, I feel great right now. I don't think I have thyroid issues, but I want to take care of my thyroid. Obviously, the lifestyle stuff that we mentioned, I like to recommend eating 2 Brazil nuts a day.
Yes.
Yeah. So Brazil nuts, they're hard to find, guys. You'll have to look on Amazon. Sometimes you can find them at a Whole Foods, but sticking to only 2, I don't do more than 2, but 2 Brazil nuts a day can make a big impact on just almost like a daily vitamin for your thyroid.
Yes. Love it.
All right. Let's get into estrogen, progesterone. Let's get into women's health specifically with hormones.
All right. So if we can start with estrogen, if that's okay with you. Estrogen is one of the most important female reproductive hormones that there is. Not only does your estrogen levels need to be right to be able to have a normal period, to be able to get pregnant if you're still trying to have children, but it's also super important for our mood, for temperature regulation, for heart health. People don't think about that. Estrogen is key for heart health, especially with the older we get. And you think about that, you hear that, heart disease is the number one killer for women 55 and over in the United States. Well, think about when people are typically menopausal, is in that mid 50s and past area. And what happens is estrogen keeps your blood vessels to where they can kind of move, keeps them more flexible. And so it's easier for blood to go through that. When estrogen goes down, our blood vessels kind of start to become more rigid, and they don't move as freely. So it's harder for the blood to get through. And when it's harder for the blood to pass through, then your blood pressure is going to go up. Well, Heart disease goes hand in hand with blood pressure. If your blood pressure stays high, then we're at risk of stroke. And so estrogen is super important for cardiovascular protection. It also is important for bone density, as well as brain function. You know, there's a lot of research now showing that possibly there's a big correlation between low estrogen and dementia. Well, when do you typically see dementia? After menopause has happened,
Right.
because that estrogen has dropped. So even before menopause and before perimenopause, when you're still having periods, low estrogen can cause terrible PMS. So those painful, heavy, painful periods, that week before your period, you just feel like that your mood is low. You can't tolerate anybody. A lot of times that's due to the decrease in estrogen. And so many processed foods have the what we like to call fake estrogens in it.
Yeah.
That's not good for your body, that doesn't help your real estrogen that's in your body. And there's a book called Estrogen Matters that I think every female should read about the importance of estrogen.
Yeah, estrogen is so important, and it will naturally decrease as we age. And that again, you're going to hear me say strength training all the time, because strength training is one of the most valuable things that you can do. The earlier you start, the better. But if you're listening to this in your later years, start now, because your bone mass starts to decrease as that estrogen starts to drop. And so putting on muscle is going to help you with falls. You know, when estrogen starts to decrease, your bones can become more brittle. You slip, you fall, you break a hip. We hear that all the time. And strength training is one of the best preventatives that you can do for that. All right, let's talk about progesterone, the happy hormone.
So estrogen and progesterone kind of work hand in hand. If your estrogen is low, then it's going to be a little harder. Estrogen kind of produces progesterone receptors. It works as a progesterone receptor. So if it's low, it's going to be harder for your body to be able to do with progesterone what it should do. But think of your progesterone kind of as your calming, balancing hormone. You're going to see a lot in that right before you start your period, and then when you're into perimenopause and menopause, when your progesterone's low in those times, that it's harder for you to sleep. You may have more trouble with depression. And progesterone's super important for bone density, just as important as estrogen is. It protects those bones. And I know you're gonna hear us talk about bones a lot in this, but bone health is so important for women, and it is hand in hand with hormone balance. So progesterone also, like I said, affects the mood, affects sleep. It also is super important for being able to maintain a pregnancy. For those of us who are still able to have children, it's important that our progesterone levels are where they should be to be able to carry out a pregnancy for a full 39 to 40 weeks. It also plays a big role in regular periods, regular cycles. If your progesterone's low, you may find that your cycle may be either too long, it lasts 40 days versus your 28 to 30, or it's only lasting 15. Huge. It's a huge component to your menstrual cycle.
Yeah. And if you are having the breakthrough bleeding through the month,
absolutely,
that can be a sign there that you need to get your progesterone checked. If you've had a regular cycle, then midway through your cycle's done, then you bleed about another 10 days in later, have a little bit of blood there. That's a sign that you may need to get your progesterone checked.
Yes.
Yeah. And then testosterone, hit on that, because like you said, a lot of folks think, well, that's just for men, but it's not. It's for women as well. So talk about that.
So we need testosterone to keep our muscles where they should be, which we should be working out at some point as well to keep ourselves strong. Also, bone density, motivation. A lot of times you're like, I just don't have the motivation to do anything. You need to make sure your testosterone somewhere, there's some testosterone happening in your body, because it's super important to be able to get things done, that you've got the proper amount of testosterone. And to have the strength and ability to do anything, you need the correct level of testosterone. You can have too much, of course, as a lady. We see a lot of PCOS in the United States, but again, we're going to get into this processed foods.
Yeah.
But testosterone also for libido, we need it as women as well. Testosterone is super important for so many things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talked about the decline of estrogen, which definitely happens perimenopause, postmenopause, but there can also be times where you have too much estrogen.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can, in both ways, can become estrogen dominant. If you have too much estrogen, or if you have way low progesterone, you can become estrogen dominant. And so that's another thing that can prohibit you. Well, I won't say prohibit, but can make weight loss more difficult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We see that a lot in our 20 somethings and early 30s, more of your estrogen dominant symptoms, and not having quite enough progesterone or testosterone.
I think that's a good point too, Lindy, is that we have talked a lot about perimenopause and postmenopause and, kind of categorize that as well. But you can see things like estrogen dominance as early as your 20s. And those are things, so you may think, well, I'm not even close to perimenopause, but I'm still feeling like it's difficult to lose weight. And it could be some attachment to estrogen dominance and things that are going on with your hormones. So if you are feeling like some of these are like, oh, this is me, I'm getting some red flags, but I'm nowhere near, menopause, or then there's also, that doesn't mean that you don't have to have your lab. You have to wait to have your labs pulled.
That's right.
Yeah. I want to talk through this. I just talked to somebody about this yesterday, actually, and they were really reluctant about HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And we really talked and debunked a little bit of that. I want to talk through some of that. I remember my grandparents really being against hormone replacement therapy, against HRT, because it was, to them, it causes cancer. And there's a big difference between going to an OBGYN, they give you a patch, you put it on your arm, and you walk out the door. And that's really what our grandparents, that was the form of care that they had. That was what they had offered to them. And now that form of care looks so different. If you go draw your labs, have your labs drawn, can you talk a little bit about the compounding that's offered through HRT, the different methods, and why it's important to pull lab work? I think it's crucial before you take a medication to have lab work. It blows my mind that doctors don't pull labs for any medication that they prescribe. They just kind of, young person might be having bad periods and they just put them on a birth control and send them out the door. You've got to have lab work before you give me a medication for me or for my children. So talk a little bit about myths with HRT and where it is now.
So that whole HRT cancer myth happened in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. A study, the Women's Health Initiative, came out and said estrogen causes cancer. Right. Well, if you really look back in that study, in that book, Estrogen Matters, goes into this big time. It's written by an oncologist. And that study was published before it was finished.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to look at these studies that's being cited. It was studied before it was finished. They have gone back since then and looked at it, and it was a very small portion of people who actually had cancer, and it was more than likely connected to a gene of people who just can't tolerate hormones. And you've heard of BRCA testing. If you're afraid of it, get it. Yeah. Especially if it's in your family. Get the testing done. A lot of insurance, if it's in your family, will pay for it if you have a family history of breast cancer. But if you look at research now, you find that women who have had breast cancer, if they start them on hormone replacement therapy later, they can feel a little better with it. Mm-hmm. So I think that in the next few years, we're going to see that hormone replacement therapy is going to better our health even more than what we realize that it does now. But I like compounded hormones, like you said, because they are compounded. They're more, the actual hormones that they use are more, it's biologically identical. Yes. So it's more similar to what estrogen is than what just your patch would be. Right. These that we compound and put in a cream version is more like real estrogen, and it is dosed to you as a person. Yes. Based off of your lab. If we are just, insurance unfortunately does not pay for it. I'll just put that out there. They do pay for patches, but the thing for patches is there's about 4 different doses out there that we can go with, and that's it. If we can compound it based off of your labs, then it is made and constructed specifically to meet your labs and your needs and your symptoms. There's fewer ingredients and additives to it typically, and like I said, it is made specifically tailor-made for you.
Yeah, I love that. And you hit the nail on the head with that study wasn't complete. And so it was an incomplete study. And that drives me crazy in general, because when it comes to women's health, the amount of meta-analysis and studies that are out there on women's health are very, very slim. And that is on across the board for women's metabolism, for women's hormones, anything to do with women's health. The studies are so small. And I'm hopeful that in the next decade, we're going to get more studies done that are driven towards women. But right now, it's just such a small amount. And I feel like we're fighting for every piece of knowledge that we can get.
Yes.
So
Know your study.
I'm sorry?
Know your studies before you go believe in everything.
Yeah. And I'll recommend a book too, because we may have some moms listening to this and they have their daughters that are starting to get their cycle. The Period Repair Manual. That is a fantastic book. It's great for your child wouldn't read it, your teen wouldn't read it, but as a mom, that has been so helpful for me. And it works all the way through perimenopause, postmenopause, but it's the Period Repair Manual. Hands down recommend that book. I think it should be taught in college courses. It's great. We need to learn about women's health and educate ourselves. And I'm not against HRT. I'm not against birth control. Some people need that. There's different people who need different things, and whatever makes you feel your best. But you need to be educated about what you're taking.
Absolutely. Don't put anything in your body that you don't know about.
Yeah. Just be mindful of that. So if you are going to, Lindy, I'll let you talk about just the red flags here in just a second that may want to clue someone off to get their hormones panel drawn. Well, their sex hormones, let's say it that way, because we're trying to not group hormones all together, but your sex hormones drawn. You want to go day 19 through 21 of your cycle. So making sure that you're timing that so that way, if you are having a menstrual cycle, go between day 19 and day 21 for the most accurate draw, and then pull out any supplements 3 days prior to your draw so that you get a clean draw.
Yes.
And what would you say if someone has said, I am walking, lifting some weights, working on stress, I'm doing the things. I'm doing the lifestyle things, and we'll talk about those. If you've listened to this podcast, we talk about diet and health and protein and fiber, so they're giving it their all. And I have clients that are in this seat and they're giving it their all on the lifestyle. And I hear these red flags that you're getting ready to share. And I'm like, what I say is it's time to look under the hood. So what would you say, no matter your age, because like we said, menopause and perimenopause are starting earlier and earlier. So no matter your age, what would you say, these are things where you might want to look a little bit deeper?
Heavy, painful periods. I thought for years, even as a provider, that the terrible periods that I had was just kind of part of being a woman. I started researching and I started learning more, and it's really not. Something's going on. If your periods are super painful and you're having to change your tampon every hour or two, something's happening.
Yes.
So you need to let your doctor know, and you need to get some labs drawn. If your cycle 1 month is lasting 28 days and then 2 weeks later you're bleeding again, then let somebody know. We need to check your labs. If your cycle's lasting 40 days instead of 28, let somebody know. We need to check your labs. If you're going 60 days without a cycle, let somebody know. We need to check your labs. If, like I said, you're doing everything that she was just saying, and you still can't lose weight, if you're doing everything, you're getting plenty of sunshine every day, and you just feel like you're lashing out constantly, that it feels like you can't go out the door because you're just so anxious about life in general, then you may need to get things checked out. If you feel like you can't get out of bed in the morning, no matter what, then you need to get things checked out. It's not normal. And we blame, we're just under stress. We're just women. But have some grace on yourself. There really could be something else going on that could be fixed.
Yeah, I agree with all of those. And if you, another one is digestion. If your digestion is just off all the time, that could be another flag. If you've looked at, some IBS things and you feel like you're getting no resolve, it could definitely be a hormone issue, sex hormone issue as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Everything's connected to the gut.
Everything. Well, and you said something great too, Lindy. I like what you said. And a client said this to me the other day. They said, I didn't realize how bad I felt until I started feeling good. And a lot of us are in that camp, is that we really don't realize, like you said, give yourself some grace. If you're having to pull yourself up out of the bed every day, or as soon as your kids get home, if you're thinking, man, I can't show up for them. I'm just cranky, irritable. You don't have to live that way. There is so many things that you can do, and this might be a starting point for you to say, hey, I want to look under the hood on some things. because you can feel good. And I don't think
Absolutely.
people realize how bad they feel sometimes until they start feeling better. I'm sure you see that in the clinic often.
Absolutely. One other thing, if you're dealing with insomnia, so you can't stay asleep or you can't go to sleep, you've changed your sleep hygiene, you're not staying on the phone while you're laying in bed, you're not drinking caffeine at night, your progesterone may be low.
Yeah.
Huge symptom of low progesterone is insomnia. So that can be related to your sex hormones as well.
Yeah. And then you can see how they kind of feed into each other, right? Because then we talk about thyroid health, and we're saying if you're
Yes.
stressed, if you're underslept, those types of things. And so they cascade and start crossing paths. And then that's where someone can get down a pretty far functional path. And it's like you can climb out of it, but it takes more and more to climb out of that. So I scream it all the time. Like, if you feel any symptoms at all, just go get the labs drawn and see what you can do. The quicker you catch it, one, the quicker you can start feeling better. And then two, you won't have such a mountain to climb to get out of it.
All of your hormones work hand in hand. With
Yeah.
my patients, usually if they have a thyroid issue, their vitamin D is usually low too.
Yeah.
Once your thyroid is out of whack and it takes a while to be diagnosed, then your estrogen's probably messed up too. Your insulin level, usually you're going to start seeing some insulin resistance. If your estrogen's too low, your insulin level is probably going to be a little off as well. And so they all just affect each other.
They all affect each other. And you may need medication to help that, but then also eating like a lot of cruciferous vegetables. So your broccoli, cauliflower, things like that can really help get rid of some excess estrogen that you have in your body. So nutrition plays a big part in that as well. But sometimes you need more than nutrition to help that. But a healthy diet, healthy in moderation, all things in moderation, can make a big difference too on helping along with your supplements to get you on the right path.
Very few people leave my clinic with new hormones without also getting paperwork on an anti-inflammatory lifestyle and what they can do to their diet to change things, because it all goes hand in hand. We can replace your hormones all day, but
Yep.
if you want the full results of it, it's got to change in lifestyle and food as well.
Yep, it's got to. It's got to. And you guys know that those that listen to the podcast often, if you don't, on my website, on my Instagram, if you want to know how to eat, I've got you covered. We'll make sure you know how to eat protein, fats, carbohydrates, all of the good things. And the fiber, we won't go into all of that, but natural fiber is such a help with getting excess estrogen out of the body as well. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the big two. We'll talk about insulin, because insulin is a hormone, and we'll also talk about cortisol. So we'll kind of touch on those. Cortisol is just the boogeyman, and not all cortisol is bad cortisol. We need cortisol. If I like to think of the analogy of cortisol is what keeps you running from a bear. If you're in the woods and you see a bear, if you have low cortisol, you're just going to sit there and let the bear eat you because you don't have the energy to get up and go. We need cortisol to give us that get up and go, to say, if we see a bear, run from that bear. So the body really just, shoots that cortisol out to the body, red alert, let's run, let's get away from the bear. And then when you're away from the bear, the cortisol comes back down. So there is a pattern. It should be higher in the morning to help you get up, to get out of the bed, and then taper off so that at nighttime you can go to sleep. So that is what drives me crazy on social media, is that, cortisol seems to be the ultimate enemy. However, you need cortisol. We need that to run from the bear. The problem is that we're not running from bears in everyday life, but we are running from whatever our mind is feeding us, or we're running from the lifestyle that we've built for ourselves. And so we are constantly in a heightened state of running, and we never stop running. And then over time, that taxes our adrenal system. So this is where I really want you guys to hear that pulling your cortisol is very important on a lab panel. And also, please do not self-medicate on anything, but please do not self-medicate on cortisol. I have seen people self-medicate taking every influencer cortisol, and they had likely normal cortisol levels, but they took those and bottomed out their cortisol because they were self-medicating. And so I hope you walk away with a ton from this podcast, but I really want to hit on that cortisol piece and what you can do, what you do want to look for, and please do not self-medicate on that. That is my big soapbox on that, because we can identify with so many symptoms and just self-medicate. So if you can talk about that some.
Yes. So, like you said, use the bear analogy. I call cortisol a flight or flight. Well, I can't talk. Flight or fight response. We need that, and it's important that we have it. But I think once some of us live in such a stressful environment, you work in a job and trying to keep your family fed and trying to stay involved in church, and maybe your mom's sick and you're taking care of her on top of your family, and that cortisol level stays up so much that your progesterone starts to go down. The cortisol directly affects the progesterone, and it kind of bottoms out. You notice the little belly fat that you can't get rid of due to that high cortisol. And it stays high so long that then it eventually will bottom out from being high for so long. And then again, you're still feeling terrible. Just because it went down doesn't mean that you feel any better. You may actually feel worse because it's so low. But stress management is huge with this.
Yeah. All right. Podcast listeners, I'm sorry. My daughter needs to come in, and I don't edit this podcast, so this is the real deal. She has to get ready for church tonight. Give me just a second. Okay. This is the real deal. This has never happened. Welcome to Real. It's for a good reason. She's going to church tonight to rally, so
yes.
She can get ready. So we don't edit this podcast. It's the real life. So go ahead, Lindy. Get back into it. I appreciate it.
So it's super important that we learn to manage stress to be able to manage our cortisol. Yeah. And like she said, you just can't take anything, because you can't, if you bottom it out, then you're going to end up with maybe more symptoms than what you did when it was high. So it's important that you're measuring it and that it's being measured at the right time. In the morning, like you said, is when it should be the highest. Probably your more accurate version is a saliva, but it's kind of hard to do that and run a real life. So I do a serum cortisol, but they do it in the morning. If I'm going to run a cortisol, I do it in the morning to kind of see where it's at. This year, my cortisol personally has been really, really low because I've been under a lot of stress with opening this clinic. So I'm on a particular supplement for that and feeling a lot better. But like I said, if cortisol's off, your sex hormones are going to be off. A lot of times your vitamin D is going to be low too. They all affect each other. Yeah. Good. And so, yeah, like and cortisol is, I have seen from experience, one of the easiest things to fix. Absolutely. So if you, again, social media, boogeyman, cortisol, but I've seen cortisol turn around in 60 days. I agree. Yeah. So what's some factors that you may be running high, and what's some factors that you may be running low from flag standpoint? Hey, maybe I want to get my cortisol drawn. I'm having trouble going to sleep. Mm-hmm. I'm having trouble staying asleep. Even if I get a full 8 hours sleep, I feel like I've not slept at all the next day. I feel like I can't hardly get out of bed. I just am gaining weight right here in my belly, nowhere else. This is like where it's all wanting to hang out, is here in the belly. And I just feel like I'm constantly like this, on the verge of screaming. Yeah. Those are kind of the ones that I see a lot with cortisol. The one I would add to that is that you are waking up kind of right at that 3 a.m. hour. Mm-hmm. At 3 a.m., let's go, kind of, and can't go back to sleep. Yeah. All right, let's wrap up with insulin. So with insulin, that is a hormone, and that is more correlated to hormones. I keep saying hormones because I'm used to saying, but to sex hormones, perimenopause, postmenopause. And we're seeing a lot more insulin resistance than we've seen in the past. So we're seeing a lot of that, and I believe that that's coming from menopause shifting back a decade almost. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So think about what insulin does. Insulin is what helps our sugar, or our body turn our sugar into energy, puts it into cells to actually make energy from sugar. And so when those cells stop responding to that conversion, then we see insulin resistance. And you hear that term a lot lately. Mm-hmm. You're also hearing the term PCOS a lot more than what we used to, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And one of the number one diagnostic markers of PCOS is insulin resistance. And like I said earlier, we're seeing a correlation between low estrogen and insulin resistance. And when we have insulin resistance, we're going to start having trouble losing weight because that sugar's not being turned into energy the way that it should. It's going to affect our skin. It ends up affecting your thyroid as well, and then all of those sex hormones as well. And then you get the diabetes involved in it if we can't get that insulin corrected. And then we go down a whole nother rabbit trail of heart disease and kidney disease and Alzheimer's and stroke risk. And so insulin is super important. I know it's not talked about that much until somebody's already told that they're a diabetic or that they're insulin resistant. But a fasting insulin is super important for your blood work if you're not feeling well. And you think about it, your blood sugar can affect your mood big time as well.
Big time.
So it's super, super important.
Big time. And your insulin, they will not pull that again. Typically at the doctor, they'll pull an A1C, they'll pull a glucose. I had someone, and her fasting glucose was okay. It wasn't the best, but it definitely wasn't the worst. But then we found that, I said, you know what, let's get that. I just said, we've got to go draw the insulin. Her insulin was at a 30. And a 30. I was like, ooh, we got some work to do here. But the doctors we had to request that. We had to request the insulin to be drawn. And so I think that that's something, ideally, I like to see insulin at a 5 or less. And so if you catch it and it's at a 7, you can definitely get in there. But when you are insulin resistant, that's one thing that's really hard to work through. Where I say cortisol, you can turn that around in 60 days. Insulin resistance, it's like 2 years, to do that. So being mindful of asking for that insulin draw every time you go is really important. And it doesn't, I think before, again, one of those myths that if you're insulin resistant, you're overweight, but that's not the case either. Mm-hmm. We're seeing people who are more relatively lean pop up with insulin resistance.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we've covered a whole lot here. This has been a fantastic episode. What information, Lindy, would you like that we've not talked about? What would you like to cover or say that we've not said too much about on this podcast?
I'm sure you're going to get to this because this is what you specialize in, but I just can't say enough about how it all starts with food.
That's right.
It really does. It really all starts with food. There's so much, especially nowadays, that's added to our foods and to what we wear and to what we drink out of that just directly influences our hormones that is so important to, if you have children, to pay attention to so that they're not dealing with some of the stuff that we're seeing maybe in our generation just because of lack of knowledge. We didn't know this stuff was happening in the things that we're consuming, the environment, environmental exposures, stress. I think learning to handle stress, that's something we were not really taught well. You just do it because you're a woman and this is what it's part of being a mom or it's part of being a woman. But you deserve to, we hear self-care and so many times you think that's just going to dinner with girls and wasting money, but it's not necessarily. Taking care of yourself is doing what the Bible says. It says in the Bible, brethren, I would that you would prosper in health just as your soul prospers.
Amen.
And so take care of yourself. Jesus went off on his own to spend time and just recover. And he told his disciples after he'd been out in the wilderness and people were listening to them preach, he said, go off and be by yourself for a while and eat. Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. Yes. I agree.
So it's super important.
It's so important. And like you said, we can draw labs after labs after labs, but if you don't get your food in order and if you don't move your body, just move. And if you don't do those two things, it doesn't really matter what your labs say. It doesn't really matter what supplements you take. You cannot out-supplement a poor diet and a poor lifestyle. And where I would start, because that can seem like overwhelming, like, well, I already feel this way. And, I've got every red flag that you guys have talked about. I'm going to work myself out of a hole. Switch your mindset on that and say, you know what? This podcast is bringing me hope. Maybe I do feel this way. Maybe I do feel overwhelmed, but by the grace of God, in Jesus' name, there's hope. And so take this podcast as hope and say, what can I start to own and what can I start to do? And with your lifestyle, start walking. Walking is one of the best things that you can do for stress reduction. It's one of the best things that you can do for your heart health. Like we've talked about, you strengthen your bones by walking. We talk about bone health with women. Just start walking and walk 10 minutes. Start there. If you're not walking currently, don't make an atrocious goal of 10,000 steps if you're walking 2. Start walking 10 minutes a day. Like start working that up. You may see that your red flags go from I checked off every one to now I'm down to about 70% because I've started a habit of walking. The other thing is incorporate some fruits and vegetables into your diet every day. I know that we're big on protein. I'm huge on protein, but sometimes we can get so lost in protein that we're eating protein bars and protein shakes and protein cookies and protein cereal. And those things are not bad. However, let's not get so focused on protein that we don't get the micronutrients that we need from fruits, vegetables, those types of things. And then, yes, of course, always protein, right? So just those things. And if you're like, well, that sounds great, but that also sounds overwhelming. A Greek yogurt and some berries and a little bit of dark chocolate chips, that's protein. That's your antioxidants from your berries. That's some fiber, some quality fats from the dark chocolate chips. Like, don't overcomplicate that. Like, that right there is a quality snack. Greek yogurt, berries, dark chocolate. You can also put together something super easy, barbecue chicken, a baked potato, asparagus. So you're getting in something green, you're getting in a quality carbohydrate, you're getting in some protein. So don't overhaul everything, but do a little self-audit. How much am I moving? When's the last time I had a vegetable? And how much ultra-processed foods am I eating? And if you can make changes just on those 3 things, pull out 1 ultra-processed food a day, walk a little bit, and get some fruits and vegetables. Again, you may go from I checked off 100% to now I'm just checking off 50%. And I'm getting these things in line and making them a part of who I am. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. We've learned that, and you can feel better. And that's, I think, where I want to end the episode today is that I see it every day. Lindy, I know you see it every day. And going back to that statement is you don't really realize how bad you feel until you start feeling good. And that it's okay to want to feel good.
Yes, you should want to feel good.
You should. And so, again, sometimes it hurts I like to say, rip the Band-Aid off. Sometimes it hurts to rip that Band-Aid off and self-reflect and be like, man, I'm really not feeling good, but there's no shame in asking for help.
Absolutely.
Ask for help. There's no shame in saying, you know what, maybe I haven't taken care of myself the way that I wish that I would have. You know what, we can all say that in so many different aspects. But you can stop and say, but today I'm going to start really dialing in on some things, and I deserve to be taken care of, and I deserve to feel good.
That's right.
Well, it has been a joy, Lindy. You can find you where? What's your Instagram?
Our Instagram is Her Whole Health LLC.
All right. And so Lindy accepts patients in her clinic. She would be happy to talk with you. She's working on more bigger things coming down the road to expand what she's able to offer. So I'm excited about that. Of course, you can find me on social media at Live Heal Nutrition, on my website, livehealnutrition.net. If you have questions about anything that we've covered, reach out to either one of us directly. We want to see you feel good. No question is too big or too small. We're here to help you in any way that we can.
Yes.
Thanks, Lindy, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks for the opportunity.
See you guys.